So now I'm going to show you what I think is one of the easiest ways to check if your harness is oriented correctly before you put it on. And the secret is to go to the back of your harness and check the risers. So the risers are these adjustable or sometimes non-adjustable little straps that extend from the bottom of the waist loop to the top of each leg loop. There's a couple things you want to check for. The first is that they are indeed coming from the bottom of the waist loop to the top of the leg loop. The second is that there are no twists in either strand. And the third is that the strands are parallel and not crossing like that. So I want to show you some examples of how the risers can actually tell you that the harness is not oriented correctly. So one of the first things I'm going to do is twist a leg loop. And I'm going to hold it up. And it's subtle, and I'll kind of zoom in here, but you can see that this riser right here extends not to the top of the leg loop, but the bottom of the leg loop. So this is a key that the harness is not oriented correctly. We would just have to untwist that leg loop, and then we're good to put it on. Another thing that can happen is the leg loop can get twisted around twice. Now, the riser is coming from the bottom of the waist loop to the top of the leg loop like it should. But notice that there's a distinct twist. Can you see this? A distinct twist in the riser. And that's another indication that the harness is not oriented correctly. So to fix this, we should be able to reorient it so that now the riser runs parallel. You see that? Or rather without twists, from the bottom of the waist loop to the top of the leg loop. Now the third thing that can happen, that should be a clear indicator that the harness is not oriented correctly, is that the risers become crossed with each other. So if the risers are crossed and not parallel, this is also an indication that the harness is not oriented correctly. But, oh man, getting this untangled is such a mess. But if your harness is oriented correctly, and you take a look at the back, and you examine the risers, you'll notice bottom of the waist loop to the top of the leg loops, right? Bottom waist loop, top leg loop, bottom waist loop, top leg loop. There's no twists in these strands, and the strands are parallel and they don't cross.